All right, she's going to get her drink. All right, so we're gonna have to, actually, I've got to give her computer over there, so, and I gotta load the drivers for that thing that I changed slides with. I'm just gonna talk to you all the way I'm doing about this. Now, anytime anybody goes to work in a shop, there's some protocols that are a good idea. Now, a lot of the guys that I know and that I worked with down over the years didn't observe these protocols, and it kind of gets you, I don't know, the customer satisfaction is really, really important. And I'm gonna run through a couple of these things here, and I do this every so often because it's a good idea to consider this stuff here. Try not to borrow any tool more than once. What's funny about that?
I've heard that one before.
Yeah, try not to borrow any tool more than once. So what's the problem? Have you ever had somebody that borrows your stuff and they either break it or they don't bring it back, or they're always borrowing it all the time? And I used to have this guy that would borrow from me over there across the from the shop. He had a really nice set of a snap-on toolbox with a bunch of really nice shiny new tools in it, but he was always borrowing my fuel line disconnect tools. And I say, you gonna buy some of these the next time the tool man comes? Oh man, don't give me a hard time, I just need to borrow your tools, you know, and all that. And service advisors had a tendency, because they didn't have tools, they'd come along and borrow the tools too. And these radio tools that you stick in there and release the radio and pull it out of the dash, you know what I'm talking about? I actually built some of those out of some welding rods. You know, just bent them around an inch and a 16th socket where I could stick in there. And they kept coming and borrowing my tools, and so to keep me from getting so irritated with them, I built each one of them a set. And they lost their sets really fast and then came back borrowing mine again. The transmission mechanic that worked next to me had this little special tool that you unlatch some of these older transmission lines on the early 80 model cars with. And when I found out the tool, that's when I first started working at the Ford place, I said, let me see that tool. And I saw the part number on it. I said, that's OTC. So I went on the tool truck. The very next time, he had one that belonged to the shop. Bought a tool, and I took it out there in my box, and I had one in my box. I said, I don't need to borrow that one anymore because I've got my own. $11. I bought it off the Snap-on tool truck. And he lost the one that belonged to the shop, and he came borrowing mine because he knew I had one. And so I gave him that one and bought another one, and he lost that one and came back borrowing it again. The point I'm trying to make is, don't be that person. You know what I mean? There's no point in being that person, because if you don't want to buy tools, you need to be doing something else. You know what I mean? Furthermore, when you're moving through this program here, when you're coming out the other end, if you're expecting to go to work somewhere, you better have you some tools ready to go to work if you're going to do the job, right? You can't. What they ask you when you went over there? They want to know if you had tools, right? When you went to hire on over there, right? Okay, so now don't start screwing an important bolt or plug into its hole and walk away thinking you'll remember to tighten it later. You got me? I have actually seen a vehicle.
Well,
I have seen a vehicle here, and it's been 10 years ago. It was a car just like that one. It wasn't that one, but it was one like it. And it bent valves because the guy started the bolt going into the chem gear and never torqued it and figured I'll do that later. Oil drain plugs, spark plugs, anything like that. By the way, what's the torque spec on an oil drain plug?
20 pounds.
That's about right. It's about 19, 17 to 20 usually. What about on a spark plug?
About 15.
Yeah, 15 to 20. There's one time I was talking to this guy that was a real stickler for Chevrolets. He was always building hot rod engines and everything. And I said 15 foot-pounds on a spark plug. He goes, show it to me in writing. I picked up a Delco spark plug box. I said, right there. He goes, oh, I never looked at that. Yeah. So anyway, he was a good mechanic, but he just never heard that before. But anyway, if you walk away, see, this is why Kayla goes over here and she starts the oil drain plug. And I said, hey Kayla, can you come help me pick this up? Sure, no problem. Okay, let's see, I'll go ahead and lower it now. Here's another problem we run into. If you get to where you're so comfortable doing the same job over and over again, you'd be surprised how you could forget really important stuff. You ever have that happen? Like, there's this thing. So Brian was out here, one of my students was out here working on a vehicle. It was a strange, the oil filter was on the top. And it wasn't one of those cartridge filters. It's screwed on, like an oil filter on the top, right? So he got under there and he took the drain plug out and he drained the oil and he put the drain plug back in. Then he went looking for the oil filter and he couldn't find it anywhere. It had a big skid plate under there. And this skid plate wasn't easy to take off. He had to take a whole bunch of bolts and stuff. He should have known better than that, because they're not going to make the oil filter that hard to change. And when he got it off, he looked up there and he saw the oil filter sticking up on the very top. So he put it all back on. Now think about this, he's done 2 operations underneath the truck. Then he lowers the truck, he changes the oil filter, he's done 1 operation on top of the truck, he's used to doing 2 underneath, 1 on the top, right? And then he was getting ready to start the truck. And I said, stop. Look about what you're doing. He said, what do you mean? I said, the oil and filter is still, I mean, not the oil filter, the oil's still sitting here. You hadn't even opened the bottles. This is empty, and you're getting ready to start the truck. You see what I'm saying? I mean, there's another slide. I'm going to talk about that again a little bit more in a second. All right, don't leave any vehicle with a dry crankcase or bad brakes without disabling it so it can't be started and driven. That make sense? I mean, like if you leave it so somebody can crash it or destroy it by starting it up and trying to drive it, and you leave the key in it, and you don't tell nobody nothing. Gene had the guy that used to be the maintenance man here, really good maintenance man. And it's amazing what people will do, and they'll do this on a car too. He was needing to change one of the belts on the fans in the welding building. And this fan's big squirrel cage fan, right? It's got belts going out, I mean these V-belts, one of these pulleys. So Gene goes over there and he puts a piece of red tape on the breaker. He turns off the fan breaker, puts a piece of red tape over it, you know, stuck to both sides. Brand new red tape that he put on there. He goes back over here, he's working the belt onto this pulley like a chain on a bicycle sort of, and this welding student goes over there, rips the red tape off and turns the breaker on while he's doing it. And it pulled his finger around the thing and he had to go to the, you know, get it seen about. But I mean, you know, what in the world's the guy, and you go there, why did you do that? I'm over here trying to work on it. Didn't you see the red tape? Well, I didn't know. You know what I'm saying? And people do that kind of stuff. So make darn sure they can't drive the vehicle. You got it? I mean, make sure the key's in your toolbox or somewhere where they can't get to it. If you have to leave it with a dry crank or with no coolant in it. And where's Noah? Noah here? Yeah. It's really important to burp all the air out of the cooling system too, right? If you pour in the cooling system, pouring the water in the cooling system, it's not like pouring water in a bucket. You got to make sure all the air is out of the block because you burn them up that way. All right, it's really important. All right, so, all right, when you're parking a customer's vehicle outside, don't leave the windows down, even if the weather's clear. Now, I'll tell you something else you need to do. Look up and see if they have a sunroof. If it's open, the windows can be up, right? And it can still rain in there. Seen that happen. Mechanic pulls it out, never even looked up. Kind of overcast outside. He didn't realize it had a sunroof. It was open. Just parked it outside, rolled it up, locked it up, went in. Comes a big rain. Lady comes to get her car. She splashes into water in her seat about this deep. Furiously angry with the service manager. So anyway, you know, had to work on doing that. So pay attention to that. One of the guys several years ago here got my little Hyundai Sonata, you know, the little purple one we got. Parked it right out there with the windows down. Put the key in his pocket, took it home, didn't come back to class the next day, and it rained. And that was the only key to that car I had. Right? Think about it. Now, you might see this little thing I got up here. See that? Right. All right. I didn't know you had it. If the car is parked inside, one window should be down if possible, and the key should be in the car. Here's another thing. Don't just roll the windows down without knowing whether or not there's a problem with it, because every now and then you'll get yourself in a pickle. You'll roll the window down and you'll find out there was the customer knew about it but didn't tell you that the window will go down but it will not go back up. See what I'm saying? So that's something else. Also, what we used to have to do was lock the car with the key instead of just pushing the lock and closing the door. Lock the car with the key because the key may not fit the lock. You can lock yourself out of it like that. You know what I'm saying? Even if you got a key in your hand that you think ought to open it. So just, you know, think ahead on that kind of thing. And we used to have that kind of a problem all the time. When doing an oil change along with another service operation like a tire rotation, you know, how do you do that? What's your procedure for that? If you do an oil change and a tire rotation, which one do you do first?
It's usually 2 of us work on it at one time, but
Yeah.
I usually do the tire rotation first and then the oil change, because
Yeah.
the oil change is easier.
Yeah, the oil change is easier. You do the hard part first. That's a smart thing. But I have seen people here. They'll say, okay, they'll raise it up, they'll drain the oil out, they'll change the filter, put the oil drain plug back in, tighten it, and they'll go about halfway down, and then they'll do their tire rotation,
Yeah, forget about the oil.
and they forget to put the oil in it. Seen that happen.
Nicholas Lane with a shop car.
Yeah, and right here.
Yeah, out here.
Except that wasn't, that may have, I don't know what caused it.
You come out hollering, shut it off, shut it off.
Yeah.
Remember he didn't put the oil in?
Yeah, and he was, and you know what everybody always does when you yell at them about that and say, don't do that, they laugh about it, like it's funny. But it's not, you know, if you lock one up like
He
that.
told him to start the car, so he started the car, but he didn't tell you
Yeah.
that he didn't put
Well,
the
he was
oil
in the middle of two operations and
Yeah.
he didn't finish both of them. He figured, I'm done when I've torqued the lugs, and then he figured he's gonna crank it up and drive it out, you know. All right, here you go. Being a really good mechanic doesn't give you a license to be a jerk.
Yes.
You ever seen somebody that's really, really good at their work and they thought because they're really good at their work, they can be a jerk? You know what I mean? I used to have people all along that would call me from other shops, you know, wanting to know, that'd be to help them try to troubleshoot something over the phone. I've been having some of that going on this week too, and all that. And it's hard to fix something on the phone, you know what I mean? I mean, it really is, because I mean, all you can get is information on. I had this one people that sent through my website, they sent me email, and the guy says, and everything I told him, he was like, we already did that one now, we already did that one now. And I knew he didn't do all of the stuff I told him, you know. I really don't have time for those people on that. Anyway, don't plunder in the console or the glove box of a customer's car just to see what they got in there. It ain't none of your business. You know what I'm saying? Unless, for some reason, like on some of the cars, the vehicles that we had to do recalls and stuff on, you'd have to take the console out. And to take the console out, you'd have to take the stuff out of the console.
I pulled the registration out of one car because I couldn't find the VIN on there.
Yeah. Well, that's for a reason. That's not plundering. Plundering is whenever you're looking to see, hey, maybe they got a gun in here that I can check out, and, you know, this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? One day this guy came in here, and he was a real sort of a peculiar kind of a guy. And he comes in here with this pale face, and he goes, this guy's got a gun in his glove box. I said, well, leave the dadgum gun alone and fix the truck. Why are you even telling me this? I don't care about that. You know, but one way or another, there's a lot of stuff in here that these people will leave in their vehicles. They'll leave money in there. Just, you know, $50 bill laid on the dash and all that. Don't be the person that takes that stuff. You see that? You see stuff in people's cars, you know, change and money and cash and all that kind of stuff. And these little 16-pack Wrigley's chewing gums, it's either almost all used up or they don't have any out of their, got one, so you're tempted to take a piece of that chewing gum. Don't go there, okay? It ain't yours.
I don't think I've ever been tempted to take chewing gum out of a car, but
All right. But, well, this one guy that I saw this happen 2 or 3 times when I was over there in Dothan. People getting fired for stealing change out of people's cars, and they usually, if they suspect somebody's doing it, they set a trap for them. You know, like paint, coloring the quarters around the side black so you can't tell, and then put them in the cup holders, and they'll catch the guy when nobody else but him's been in the car, tell him to empty his pockets, and then when those marked quarters are in his pocket. I mean, I've seen this happen, you know. Don't take any of their ashtray coins, this is what I was talking about, or chewing gum, or anything else you think they won't notice. Because, you know, to begin with, it ain't right to do it. And you're representing the place that you're working for, and you don't want to be one of those kind of people. You know what? Performance. What's the A? Attitude. What's the next one?
what was the last?
Integrity and dependability
Yes.
and all that. Did you see the thing I put in the little automotive chat box about the reason that people get fired from their jobs all the time? Not showing up for work, doing crappy work, you know, having a bad attitude. But I will tell you one thing that will carry you, if there's one thing that will carry you longer than anything else before they let you go, it's attitude. If your attitude's good, a lot of the times they'll not, you know, of course your attitude, if you got a good attitude, you're also going to have these other things too. They sort of tied together. Okay, you got an attitude, you're going to try to perform. And they know when you're trying and when you're not. You know, boss men aren't stupid. Ain't that right? You work for some sharp people, don't you, over there? They're not dummies.
No.
Don't change the radio station. Turn the radio off if you don't like what's playing. Really ain't got no business listening to the radio anyway.
I've
know what I mean?
accidentally changed the station, but I was trying to figure out, because some of the cars, you have to press all these buttons to try to reset the oil valve,
Yeah.
and then it'll like switch through the stations.
Well, yeah, you weren't playing them for the radio. They got buttons everywhere that do things. But what you got to do is I get in there, I turn it off, unless I'm working on the radio. You know what I mean? Then I actually have to do it. But I mean, basically, I'm not gonna change it. And this one guy that I saw, was working over there, and he had both doors on the customer's car open and had the stereo turned up bumping and thumping. And the customer happened to poke his head out into the shop and saw that going on, and he threw such a screaming fit about it that the service manager fired the guy that was working on the car. It's just no point in that, you know? And one time this guy, that was my partner that worked there, you know, he had to come down the middle of the shop and come into his service bay, and I came in off the yard from the outside doors into mine, because we had service bays all in the shop. And he had a radio station playing over there, and it was on Wolf FM or something. I didn't have any problem with that. And then he changed it to some head banging acid rock garbage, and just driving me up the wall. And this is wintertime outside, you know. And I said, I wish you'd change that radio station. This is driving me crazy, man. That's one of the reasons that I don't listen to music a lot in here, because not everybody likes the same kind of music. You may be happy as a lark, the guy next to you maybe can't concentrate because it's grating on their nerves, so we don't listen to a lot of music in here. And also not a good idea to stop your ears up with stuff and listen to music, because I've had to call people and say, hey, 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 like, huh, what? You know, and if there's something about to fall on their head, you know. But anyhow, I said, look, change, he said, and so he blows up and he says, I like that radio station and I'm not changing it. I said, okay. And so I go over here, and I open my door. You know, I'm kind of hot-natured anyway. I don't ever wear a coat. You know, got hair all over me, so it keeps me warm. And so I'm walking around in there just working, enjoying the cold air. And he goes, man, close that door. It's freezing in here. I said, I like that door open, and I'm not putting it down. He says, his veins were bulging in his neck, and he got up in my face, and he goes, okay, I'll change the radio station, but it's not because you got the door open. Now put that door down. So he changed the radio station, and I put the door down, you know. I mean, you know, it's a trade-off. You know, you can freeze and listen to your crappy music or whatever. But anyway, I didn't have a lot of problems with him, although one time I did take some used antifreeze he had imported in my vehicle, you know, when I was working on it. You didn't even ask. All right, so when replacing something like a water pump, glue the gasket to the pump instead of the mating surface. If it's one you got to glue the gasket. Most water pumps now have got an O-ring. You know what I mean? And it makes things easier for the next person. If you ever had to scrape a gasket and you just work and work and work and work and work, when you're scraping a gasket, try not to gouge the metal. Secondly, feel of it with your fingers if you think you got it clean, and you'll feel something if it's still there. You know what I mean? Like it's rub your finger away, because you can tell when something's smooth because your fingers are really sensitive. And if it's got a bump anywhere, you need to make sure you can get some sandpaper or something to make that thing really, really smooth. Because you don't have to pull it back apart because it's seeping water or whatever, or coolant after you put it back together. Just make the next person happy that they worked behind you. That's basically the thing on that. And always respect the next technician and work like this. And that's what I said. The next one might be you. Occasionally, you see, you know, where you work on something like this, and also the next guy worry about this, you know, I'll just go ahead and do this thing here. And then whenever, you know, a couple of years later, that one comes back in for more work, and now you got to go back and deal with the mess that you created, and it happens sometimes, you know. Anyway, but don't dress like a slob if you want to be considered a professional. You ever do that? You ever dress like a slob and want somebody to treat you like a professional? That's not a good plan, is it? I used to see people, some of these guys would come to I always have dressed like this my whole career. I don't remember a time in all these years of working and teaching, and also working in a shop for 25 years, I wore a uniform with a belt, shirt tail in, you know, and all this kind of stuff. That's always the way I did that. And if you want to look professional. It was kind of funny, these people from up north will bring their motorhomes to get them worked on over there. You know, we had to work on motorhomes. And it was kind of funny, because they said, the person that we took our motorhome to last time to get it worked on didn't even have any patches on his shirt. You know, they were concerned because they didn't have credentials. You know what I'm saying? Wasn't it kind of funny? And so I'm pulling the motorhome where they're driving it back in around the left side of the dealership where all the body shop stuff is. And there's smashed up cars out here. And he says, what are these smashed up cars out here? I said, this is the cars I smashed up driving motorhomes. You know, but anyway, the long and the short of it is, make sure that you dress and you act professionally, and also never assume that it's okay, that it's okay to use foul language, because a lot of customers don't like that. You know what I mean? I mean, I don't use foul language anyway, but I mean, what I'm saying is, a lot of times if you use foul language, you're representing the place that you're working for. And you need to be aware of that, you know. And sometimes they may be ticked off at the place you're working for, either, too. All right, that's the end of the best practices PowerPoint thing. Anybody got anything else? I'm gonna tell you, let me say another couple of things.